Bio 181, Chapter 12 on genetics and inheritance. And we're talking about part 2 of non-Mendelian genetics. So these are things that are not pure dominant recessive. So quantitative traits, these are traits that are coded for by more than one gene. So they're affected by more than one gene, and they have a pattern that's associated with continuous variation in the phenotype. So for example, height in many organisms, but humans, is going to be affected by many different genes. So there's a ton. Some of them might be the skeletal. Quickly is the cartilage going to expand at the end of the bone? How nutrient absorption. So nutrients, when you're eating, how the phosphorus and the potassium and all of those nutrients, how are those going to be absorbed and metabolized? So nutrient absorption, you have a gene associated with that. Okay, so growth hormones. So growth hormones produced in abundance and signals your muscles and just grow like crazy. And so you are going to be extra tall. So these are just a few examples of genes that can combine to create height. And you will take individuals in a line. Individuals, and you can see sort of a bell curve. Individuals are going to be a certain height. I don't know. So, and here in the middle. This is the fact that height is determined by more than one gene. And not to get ahead of myself, but in fact, so height, about 80% of height is going to be determined by genetics. So 80% is determined by genetics, and then about 20% is going to be environmental. So in pleiotropy, this is another vocabulary word. So pleiotropy, so pleo is many. So there's more than one gene that affects one gene, many different traits. So the example here, you've got one gene, this chromosome. This is a mutation in gene sickle cell anemia. When gene mutation. And so this is going to be part of hemoglobin, which is in our red blood cells. And that's important for carrying around oxygen all throughout the body. And so if you have a mutation in here where you reduce the ability of this protein, hemoglobin, to carry or transport oxygen, then you can have low oxygen, which can result in a lot of traits like the quality of your vision, resulting in blindness if you don't have enough oxygen. You can have liver failure, you can have heart attack, cardiovascular disease. So all of these different traits are heavily influenced by a gene that is going to influence oxygen delivery to your tissues. So phenotypes can be affected by the environment. So this is the other side of the height example. So for height, right, you've got 80% of your height as a human about it's determined by your genes. That means then you have about of your height, which is going to be due to your environment. So that can be things like the nutrition, right? Your calories, so the nutrients that are available. Populations is they were nutrient deprived, and when they able to harvest food that had high nutrient quality, their height, the entire population went up. So nutrient availability, other things like um, sleep and exercise, right? Sleep, exercise, those can all contribute to the number of calories you're getting. So in addition to the proper nutrient content, are you just getting enough energy? Narrow sense heritability is related to this. So this is a number that is a fraction of the phenotypic variance. You can attribute to the variation in the genes. So you could say, all right, the genetic component is going to be 0.8, right? The narrow sense heritability component is going to be something like that. So this is a summary slide. It covers more than we did in this video, but I like it. So it's table 12.2 in the book. It talks about polygenic inheritance, which is more than one gene for a single trait. So this would be like our height, right? I don't have to write it out, show them right here. Pleiotropy, single gene can affect more than one trait. So this was like an oxygen, the low oxygen example. Hemoglobin, and you can have lots of different traits by it. That was sickle cell anemia example. Multiple alleles for a gene, that could be ABO blood type, or it could be dominance is not always incomplete dominance. You have an intermediate phenotype, so this would be like the pink flowers. You can have a co-dominance where it's expressed, so they're both expressed. So you have flowers that were red and white petals or patches. Human blood group is an example of co-dominance. Environmental factors. So genes can be affected by the environment. This is what's called phenotypic plasticity. Phenotypicity. So that's the ability of the physical expression to change based on the environment. So there are certain things that are going to be relatively well constrained. Like human height, you're not going to see an individual that is 25 feet tall. There's a limit. Whereas trees, you can have a lot more variation based on environmental conditions. Maybe it's 2 feet tall, if it's very dry, a nutrient poor environment, the tree could go up to 100 feet given the right conditions. So that environmental factors or phenotypic plasticity. Then the gene interaction. This is epistasis was the example, epistasis. And that's where you have, a gene on one chromosome, in this case, pigmentation deposition that affected the barcode. So if you have a gene that blocks pigment deposition, then you're going to have an albino similar type of organism, even if you have this gene